Hey there guys, welcome back to the Gamer's Grotto. Today we're going to be looking at Valiant Hearts, The Great War. This is a game that was made back in 2014. I just saw the copyright. Back in 2014 by Ubisoft. It was on PS4. I'm playing it on the PS5 because backwards compatibility and all that jazz. This is a really cool adventure-style game. I really love the animation of this, and while there is no voice acting and a very little narration, a lot of what the story tells is told through the animation. So it's actually really cool. So we're going to be hopping right into this right now. Let's play Valiant Hearts, The Great War.
August 1st, 1914. After the assassination of Prince Franz Ferdinand of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire declares war on Russia. Because of established alliances, France is preparing for conflict. A few hours after the announcement of the general mobilization, German civilians living in France are asked to leave the country. Karl is one of them. A few days after Karl was deported, the war was hungry for more and took away Emil as well. A heavy-hearted Emil was called up to fight and left the farm for Samuel. Like so many others, he had no idea what fate had in store for him.
Calme-moi le bignou! Lève encore! Soldats, au bout des rangs! Allez! Calme-moi le bignou! Bravo, ballon! De ce côté! Bien, toi! Lâche-moi le bruit! Rejoins la nuit! Je te dis de palais, moi!
the barracks and the regiment. Battalions comprised of a battalion headquarters and 4 companies, a total of 1,007 men. In all, companies were composed of 4 platoons, in turn divided into 4 sections, each of 12 men, commanded by an NCO. Britain was slow to mobilize on the Western Front. Half its army was overseas and with a genuine fear of invasion. Infantry divisions were held in reserve in Britain and not included in the British Expeditionary Force. While conscription only came into force in 1916, voluntary enlistment was initially overwhelming, with 750,000 men eager to show their patriotism. War is declared. June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne, was assassinated in Sarajevo. As a result of the chain of diplomatic and military alliances in place, the event launched Europe into an armed conflict that, with the involvement of colonies, took on a global dimension. August 1st, Germany declared war on Russia. August 3rd, Germany declared war on France. August 4th, Britain declared war on Germany. August 11th and 12th, France and Britain declared war on Austria-Hungary. Railways. With the outbreak of war, each country was eager to dispatch its army in situ as quickly as possible to gain the advantage. Railways were essential for mobilization and supply. By August 1914, the British realized the importance of rail in the war effort and dispatched Royal Engineers to the front to build new lines. By 1917, 40,000 enlisted railway soldiers were working for the RE in France and Flanders. The debacle of August 1914. In the early fighting, the German army made swift progress. After invading Belgium, they marched on Paris in late August. French troops retreated en masse, and units were outflanked and repelled, taken prisoner or killed. The months of August to September 1914 marked the bloodiest period of the war, with over 180,000 French casualties alone. The French authorities described the debacle as an organized retreat. The war to win over public opinion had begun.
My dear Marie, we are on our way to Paris. The atmosphere here is strangely cheerful. I hope that the harvest goes well. Rely on our neighbors for help. They've always been gracious and charitable people. I'll write again as soon as I get my assignment. Please kiss my little grandson for me.
At the train depot in Paris, trying to reach his regiment at Platform 21, Emile would meet the man he would soon fight alongside. The man who would come to be his truest friend. August 21st, 1914. Emil's regiment was sent to fight against the 71st German Division led by Baron von Dorf. The general cheer of the first hours dissipated into the fear of first combat.
Bataillon, en avant, au bas. Généraux, bataillon, vive la France!
Miss Marie Chillon. Private Emile Chillon from the 150th Infantry Regiment was wounded by enemy fire on August 21st. He has been captured by the enemy. Hopefully, you shall receive news from him soon. Freddy, originally from America, enlisted voluntarily in the French forces at the start of the war. Behind his bravery hid a man already devastated by the war's effects. A man with one sole obsession: punish those who had destroyed his life. It was at the Battle of the Marne that Freddy finally picked up the trail of the regiment commanded by Baron von Dorf.
Allez, allez!
Americans in the French Army. 128 Americans enrolled in the French Army from the start of the conflict, mostly in Paris, including the poet Alan Seeger. The majority joined the Foreign Legion and took part in the Battle of the Marne. Others joined the Air Force, which later became the Lafayette Squadron. 24 gave their lives for France, including Alan Seeger. The media attention they received in the United States played a decisive role in their own country's decision to join the war 3 years later. The Battle of the Marne. Drawn up long before the war, the von Schlieffen Plan aimed at swiftly overrunning France via Belgium and northern France. After the August debacle on September 6, French troops turned to face German troops in the decisive Battle of the Marne and prevented the capture of Paris. The battle was the first time Franco-British forces managed to halt the German advance and thwart the main German battle plan. The front retreated northwards and stabilized in December, when trench warfare began in earnest. Machine guns. The Great War demonstrated the technical progress of the age, symbolized by the machine gun. World War I devices could now shoot up to 200 bullets before requiring cooling, and were perfectly integrated into infantry attacks. German machine guns deployed in the front line gave them a vast superiority at the start of the conflict. Capture the flag. Flags were powerful symbols for each unit, and once captured, became trophies. When overrun, soldiers took the time to hide or bury them before being taken prisoner. With the arrival of French warfare, flags disappeared from the battlefield and only made an appearance at military ceremonies away from the front. August 20th, 1914. We spent yet another day walking. We heard cannon fire for the first time today. I don't want to have to kill. I must stop thinking about it and get some sleep. August 12th, 1914. At last, I can't wait to get fighting. Maybe it'll ease some of the pain I feel inside. August 1st, 1914. The bells all over Paris started chiming at 4 p.m. this afternoon. It was eerie. Somebody in the street told me it was for the troop mobilization in case Germany declares war. I'll write to Father to find out what's going on in Belgium. August 1st, 1914. It feels strange to return to Germany. At least Emile can take care of Marie and Victor. Things should calm down in the months to come. It's all so meaningless. August 24th, 1914. That letter gave me such a fright. Poor Daddy. He's been wounded and taken prisoner by the Germans. I don't know if he's seriously injured, and if he's being well taken care of. I've been told prisoners are allowed to receive letters. I shall write to him tomorrow.
Thanks to support from British forces, the German plan failed. The front line moved back to the north, and with the arrival of winter, froze. Soldiers holed up amid a vast labyrinth of trenches and tunnels that would become the indelible image of the Great War. Karl's regiment retreated to the outskirts of Neuve-Chapelle, the same camp where Emile was being held prisoner.
Släpp det vita am hang! Maintenant.
Photo frame. Even though photography was not widespread, many soldiers had their photos taken before setting out for the war. Professional prints were developed on photo paper and applied to a hard backing to prevent tearing. Some photos were directly printed as postcards, especially group conscript photos. "6 million prisoners of war." Between 1914 and 1918, over 6 million men were taken prisoner, including 1.2 million Germans and 200,000 British troops. Despite the 1907 Hague Convention and the efforts of the International Red Cross, prison conditions and forced labor proved harsh for conscripts, and hundreds of thousands never made it home. Letters. Letters remained the only real means of communication with the outside world. Radios and telephones were only used for military ends. All soldiers wrote to their loved ones back home. As war correspondence was free of charge, this created logistical and financial problems. 10 billion letters and postcards were sent to and from the front during the war. The early war postal system was chaotic, but then the front was then separated into sectors, each with its own postcode. The visit from the military postmaster was eagerly awaited. The Battle of Neuve-Chapelle. March 10th, 1915, British shells literally rained down on German forces. For the first time, the technique creeping barrage was used. A barrage where the fire of all units targets the same position for a period before advancing one line at a time. The infantry's advance was synchronized at a safe distance behind this barrage, so that German lines could then be overrun. That day, 530 cannons fired over 216,000 shells. That is to say, one shell per weapon every 2 minutes. The Garwal Rifles. In the early 20th century, Great Britain and France governed huge colonial empires and put them to use during the war. Indian troops were deployed by Britain and in the Middle East as well as on the European front, and made an important contribution to the war effort. Many victories were achieved thanks to their bravery and discipline in combat. A monument commemorating their sacrifice stands in Neuve-Chapelle, France. Mud. Trench life was difficult. Soldiers were confronted with cold, rain, and mud. Dirty water meant that diseases such as dysentery, typhus, and cholera flourished. The depth of the mud also presented dangers, and soldiers sometimes drowned in shell holes or in the tunnels leading to the trenches. Explosives. Trench fortifications required the use of explosives. To penetrate enemy lines, long tunnels were dug under no man's land beneath enemy trenches, inside which explosives were placed. The English used cordite, a powerful explosive that could be detonated at a distance.
Dearest Papa, we live in a climate of uncertainty. Germans use the people of Saint-Mihiel as human shields against the French bombings. I hope the Germans treat you well, and that your wound has healed. Your grandson sent you kisses. I sent you a picture of him. All my love. Please write soon.
Adieu, pal.
Camarades! Mesdames Code, Rose. Wer kommt ran? Avec attaque!
Merci. Schnuppermaß Krüger ab. Schwanderlich Dingster.
What? Ready. What? Hey, what? What? Allez. Bon chien. What? Allez, vas-y.
crucifix. The majority of soldiers believed in God, and some wore symbols of their religion. War offices had to make provisions for different religions, and a variety of religious ceremonies was performed at the front by different faiths. Priests, vicars, and rabbis offered succor and compassion to soldiers. Muslim soldiers from colonies were organized into separate battalions for practical reasons, and their beliefs were also respected. Halal food was provided as well as Muslim funeral services. August 20th, 1914. We spent yet another day walking. We heard cannon fire for the first time today. I don't want to have to kill. I must stop thinking about it and get some sleep. September 7th, 1914. I missed them by a whisker. It won't happen again. My younger brother's letter was sweet. It gave me a real boost. It's good he is back in the States, miles away from this nightmare. That kid has a knack of getting himself into trouble. August 21st, 1914. Emile, there, right in front of me, sprawling on the ground. Why did his regiment have to come up against mine? I hope he pulls through. He's one tough cookie. I must find out what POW camp he's been taken to. September 25th, 1914. Today, the Germans invaded St. Mihiel. Fortunately, the troops spared the farm. I took shelter in the cellar with Victor. Now what's going to happen?
What? Vas-y.
Compass. Soldiers use compasses to gain their bearings in open countryside. They were used in conjunction with the HQ map. Orienteering was the reserve of officers and non-commissioned officers who issued soldiers with directions.
The British troops continued their attack on Neuve-Chapelle. Their next objective, take back Port Arthur.
Sir. Yes, sir. Come on, boys, let's go. Merci, mon ami. Du Ragnar. Carl Louis Thunder. Yeah, comme this.
Amidst the never-ending attacks and counterattacks, Freddy and Emile hunted the elusive Baron and his regiment in Ypres. On April 22nd, 1915, chlorine gas was used for the first time by the Germans.
Hey, what? Allez.
Go, go, go!
March 10th, 1915. What a day! My life was saved twice today. First, by an American soldier, and then by a dog. But I'm free at last. I saw Carl before the bombing. I hope he made it out alive. I'm going to try to find him. March 10th, 1915. On the march to Belgium, where this damn regiment is stationed. I'm not alone, at least. I met a funny old French farmer guy, Emile. Doesn't say much, but if I understood right, his son-in-law's German. How crazy is that? Not a day goes by that I don't dream of you. March 10th, 1915. At last I found Emile. Just moments before the shells started flying, I hope he's managed to dodge the bombs. The letter he showed me filled my heart with joy. Marie is well, and Victor is growing up. That's all that matters. September 25th, 1914. Today, the Germans invaded Saint Mihiel. Fortunately, the troops spared the farm. I took shelter in the cellar with Victor. Now what's going to happen? The Battle of Ypres. Ypres was a key strategic town in Belgium, especially for the British. It was the gateway to the north, and thus to Britain. Canadian troops were deployed in the front line, and they proved their endurance and dependability in combat to the Allies. 6,000 Canadian lives were lost in the battle in April 1915. First gas attack. April 22nd, 1915, at Ypres came the first gas attack in history. 5,730 cylinders of chlorine were opened by the Germans in favorable winds. Chlorine gas caused burns to the eyes, skin, and lungs, even through clothing and rubber boots. The effects were devastating. The only defense found by the Canadians was to cover their noses with a urine-soaked handkerchief. Zeppelin bombardment. Zeppelins were invented in 1900 by the German Count von Zeppelin, but the first long-distance flight didn't take place until 1908. Zeppelins weren't much slower than the aircraft of the period, and were first used in reconnaissance. They could also fly at higher altitudes, so from 1915 they were used to bomb civilians in London and Paris. The Dogs of War. It is estimated that by 1918 the Germans had employed 30,000 dogs, while the Allies employed 20,000. Dogs were recruited from dog pounds and the police force, with many families also enlisting their pets. Dogs had a number of roles as sentries and scouts, in postal liaison and equipment transport, in locating casualties and explosives, and as mascots. The main breeds deployed were German Shepherds, Doberman, Pinschers, and Bouviers.
What? Hey, what?
Canadian Identification Tag. At the start of the war, Canadian identification tags were formed by a large aluminum disc, which was because they were an emergency issue and had a unique shape. They were soon replaced by standard British tags, as were those of all British Empire forces.
What? What? Hey, what? What? Hey!
Urine-soaked cloth. The only defense against a gas mask before masks were introduced was to cover the nose with a urine-soaked handkerchief. Urine reacts with chlorine directly in the handkerchief to form less noxious products, limiting the effects. It was not the most hygienic solution, but it was always better than a lung full of hydrochloric acid.
What? I didn't. What? What? Come on, man. Emil. Emil, let's go.
Gas canister deployment strategy. Gas canister deployment strategies were simple, but they did depend on the weather, especially on winds. Gas use required a constant downwind toward enemy lines to avoid the gas returning to its sender. Any battle plans were therefore dependent on the weather forecast.
What? Allez. What? Help me, Emil! What? Allez, back. Hey, what? Thank you, my friend. You in? Don't worry, friend.
Pocket watch. Time was an important factor in soldiers' lives, and military strategies for attacks and rolling barrages were based on tight chronological synchronicity. Pocket watches were the only way to tell the time.
Her name was Anna, a Belgian student living in Paris. She was hard on the trail of her missing father. For once, fate smiled on them. They were all going in the same direction. But while approaching Vimy, a German squadron spotted them.
Allez, allez. Allez, Bill! Allez!
Reste à l'autre!
Allez, vas-y. Oui. Voilà. Allez, voilà. Oui, bon chien. Merci, ouais. Das Helik voet. What? What? Hey. Allez. Allez, oui.
Letter from a German soldier. Dear Andrea, we've been stuck down this hole since January, and I can't stand it anymore. I'm sick to the back teeth with living like a rat. I really miss life as it was before, strolling beneath the linden trees with you. I even miss working in the factory. All my love. Yours, Dieter.
Allez, ouais.
Tin of sardines. Soldiers were all fed by the respective armies, but they also received parcels from back home to improve their daily lot. Tins of fish or pate gave them a more copious nutritional meal than their daily army fare.
What? 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 Vas-y.
Baron von Dorf had escaped again, but Emil had still managed to find medicine for Freddy.
Thank you, my friend.
They were quickly back on the road again. Their journey would take them to Rans, where they would at last pick up the trail of the elusive Baron and his Zeppelin.
What?
Merci beaucoup. Merci, vieux.
Ah. Oui.
Early gas mask. While gas masks were in more widespread use on the front, they were also available to civilians and in French towns close to the front, like Reims. They were fairly common. This early model was one of the first, composed of a cotton compress, doused in a neutralizing solution, and applied to the mouth and nose, similar to the British Black Veil. Reims Cathedral. The city of Reims suffered during the war, September 19, 1914. As the Germans retreated from the city, they set fire to the cathedral. Then, as the city was so close to the conflict zone, it was bombarded by zeppelins and cannon fire. During the bombardments, the statue of Joan of Arc in front of the cathedral lost a hand before it was dismantled and stored in the catacombs. By the end of the war, only 1,500 inhabitants were still living in Reims. The home front. With practically all able-bodied men mobilized at the front, women, children, and the elderly were employed in factories to ensure weapons productions. Women took on traditional male jobs. Some even held positions of responsibility. This new role changed their status in society. And in the wake of the war, women over 30 years old were given the vote. The Women's Institute held its first meeting in 1915, with the aim of encouraging women to become more involved in food production during the war, and the movement flourished. April 22nd, 1915. Those freaking shells nearly did it for me. There's no way I'm giving up so close to my goal. Apparently, their leader's called Von Dorf. I'm going to get him. Everybody else are just pawns in his game to me. April 22nd, 1915. This morning in Ypres, Von Dorf made us capture some scientist. The army is interested in his work, and apparently he'll help Germany win the war. He seems like a nice fellow, but it's hard to find out anything else about him. Von Dorf is keeping him closely guarded. Not a day goes by that I don't think about my Marie and my little Victor. I haven't seen them for 8 months. I miss them so much.
Allez.
War Godmother Certificate. To improve morale on the front, an association was created in France in early 1915 to provide succour and support from behind the lines for soldiers without close families. The War Godmothers sent letters and parcels, forming close relations with their godchildren away from the front.
Merci beaucoup.
Well, vas-y.
Advertising brochure. While the war raged on, life continued back home, and brands still advertised their products. Naturally, soldiers were used to promote brand image and boost sales. This brochure is advertising war bonds to help the government finance the war effort.
Oh, merci. Merci beaucoup.
À l'aide!
Overalls. Practically all able-bodied men were mobilized at the front, but production still had to carry on. Women took over men's roles in factories and other traditional male positions, working for much lower salaries. Some even held positions of responsibility and were involved in decision-making. This new role changed women's status in British society.
What? Ah, well.
Allez!
Hey, what?
S'il vous plaît!
What? What?
Avant! À l'aide! Allez! S'il vous plaît! À l'aide!
Hey, what? 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 Ici. what? 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 Allez. What? Vas-y. Hey, what? 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 Hey, what? 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 Okay. C'est bien, c'est bien. Ouais, viens. Allez, vas-y. Va, ouais.
S'il vous plaît!
Allez. What? What?
Safety razor. The safety razor was an early 20th century invention and shaved more safely than barber's blades. In 1917, safety razors were standard issue in U.S. soldiers' kits because it had been noticed that gas masks provided more effective protection to shaved faces.
Hey, what? Va, ouais.
Attends.
Anna was training to be a veterinarian when the war broke out. The Germans were only 20 miles from Paris when she received a letter from her father. He was in good health, but implored her not to return home to Belgium until the war's end. Patience, however, was not one of Anna's strong suits.
Inkwell. Ballpoint pens were not developed until the 1950s to 1960s, so soldiers used a quill or nib to write letters. Ink was poured into an inkwell into which, in order to provide enough ink, the quill or nib had to be dipped regularly. Letter from a Belgian civilian in Paris. Dear parents, we fled our land before the German advance to take shelter in France with the children. Unfortunately, the Germans kept coming forward, and Paris is practically under siege. If Paris falls, we shall return home to Liège. Your dear daughter, Matilda. The Germans at the gate. In September 1914, the German advance took them to within 20 miles of Paris. The government had already fled to Bordeaux and was expecting Paris to fall. In the north, most of Belgium was occupied, but under the king's command, 75,000 soldiers kept Ypres and Yssir out of German hands. Taxi to Marne. September 6th and 7th, 1914, General Gallieni requisitioned 630 Parisian taxis to transport troops rapidly to the Marne. While relatively few soldiers were actually transported, 4,000 in all, 3% of the total number of men deployed in the battle. The impact on the public was huge. The event became a symbol of solidarity for the nation, and the Marne counterattack saved Paris from German occupation.
Allez, courage. Allez. Voilà, c'est bien. Voilà.
Merci, madame.
September 7th, 1914. Taxis drove all night. Anna was proud to help the soldiers reach the front line. When Anna arrived at her destination, she discovered the horrible truth with her own eyes.
Non, 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 non. Non. Vas-y. Allez. Pas mieux. Allez, courage. Voilà, c'est...
Si bas, ma vieille.
7 months went by. Driven by compassion, Anna devoted herself, body and soul, to healing the wounded and the sick. Every life saved was another small victory over the war. The conflict, however, raged on.
suelo.
September 7th, 1914. The situation is horrific here. Yesterday I was in my warm, cozy apartment, and now I'm in the depths of hell. There are so many dead, so many young lives lost. I managed to save one soldier this morning, but there are so many others to tend to. Tomorrow I'll try to get closer to the front so I can help those most in need.
Violon, braque nous. Regarde, et là, t'as qu'à le moi.
Non, 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 non. Vas-y. Allez, courage. Allez, courage. Ça va mieux? Voilà.
Si bas, ma belle.
Tallow socks. Socks soaked in refined tallow and coated with formal, the most effective way to beat the cold and damp frostbite and other ailments. That, at least, was what the adverts had people believe. However, effective the socks were, the soldier's best friend was always a nice, dry pair. Letter from a Prussian soldier. My dear daughter, we are making headway through the French countryside. The landscape is beautiful. I'd much rather be enjoying it with you than killing people. I think of you all the time. Your father, Wolfgang. Lice comb. In their journals, soldiers often recount their losing war against lice and rats in the trenches. Apart from lice powder, the only other prevention against lice was this fine-toothed metal comb. Often when soldiers took leave behind the lines, they were scrubbed down with hot water their clothing boiled, or a new uniform issued. The Hecatomb. The first 3 months of the war saw especially heavy losses. August 22, 1914 was the bloodiest day of the whole war. With heavy casualties, the number of wounded were far greater than had been anticipated, and the military health services struggled to cope with the scale of the conflict. Nurses. Nurses were the angels of the Great War, and were generally volunteers recruited by the Red Cross, the Army, or the American ambulances to work long, grueling shifts in hospitals, both at the front and behind the lines. They played the role of carers, mothers, and confidants. They often feature in soldiers' memoirs and were sometimes their sole companion in death. The majority were demobilized at the end of hostilities. Mess tin with holes. Both dishes of this mess tin have holes in them. Not hugely practical for eating perhaps, but life-saving for one soldier. The mess tin bag was worn at kidney height. When the shell exploded, this mess tin slowed down the searing hot shrapnel in flight, which, although it wounded the soldier, helped him live another day. Mess tins were blackened using smoke to prevent them glinting in the sunlight.
The French officers were talking about Belgium. The German army was about to experiment with a new weapon near Ypres, Anna's hometown.
Papa!
Anna got en route to warn her father about the imminent danger. Reaching the outskirts of the city, Anna was greeted by the screams of sirens. The deadly gas was already here.
All right, that's where I think I'm going to end this stream for today. That was Valiant Hearts, The Great War by Ubisoft. This game came out in 2014 for the PS4. I believe it's also on PC, Xbox, and possibly Switch. It's a pretty cool side-scrolling adventure game. Obviously, there isn't very much in terms of narration with the characters. Obviously, there's narration in between scenes with cutscenes and stuff like that. But overall, not much narration for it. It kind of tells the story through animation. Pretty darn good game. I remember being quite impressed with it when I originally played it back in the day. I especially liked the sequences where you're driving the car and you're avoiding the bombs, and the bombs are like all tuned to the music that's being played. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so thank you to everybody who tuned into this stream today and the lurkers. It's always greatly appreciated. And if you liked what you saw today, please consider liking and subscribing for future content. I cover PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, PC, and VR games. If any of that interests you, please consider liking and subscribing for future content. Thanks again for everybody who tuned in, and I hope to see you again soon at the Gamers Grotto. Thanks again, and have a great evening.